This video is made possible by my patrons on Patreon. Hello everyone, my name is Xiomaro and welcome back to Battlerite Royale. So yesterday the game was officially released into early access on Steam and it mostly went quite smoothly. I know there were a lot of people, myself included, who didn't get their 50% off coupon last night, but it seems like they've all come in now. Obviously the people who get coupons are the veteran players of Battlerite, but there was actually a reasonable influx of new or returning players too. So with that in mind, I thought I'd do a beginner's guide to Battlerite Royale. Now, before I start, bear in mind that the game is still new, and because it's in early access, a lot of stuff could change between now and, well, even in a month's time, a lot could change. So if you're watching this in the future, first off, hi future people, but also if there's anything that sounds totally wrong, it's probably because something changed. A lot of the advice here though will be fairly general, so it should mostly stay relevant. I won't spend too long on each subject because I'll likely do a more in-depth video on each of the things I cover here over the coming weeks. So first off, champion selection. This is honestly one of those things that is most likely to change. The best advice I can give is to just try stuff out and see what clicks for you. At the time of making this video, Battlerite Royale is nowhere near as finely tuned as Battlerite Arena, so there are some champions who are just plain better than others. But with that being said, the same thing applies here as it does in the arena. There's a lot to be said for knowing your champion inside and out. Learn what your champion can do, and learn what other champions can do by fighting them or maybe playing them a bit too. Battlerite, whether it's arena or royale, can be a lot like rock, paper, scissors, and I don't mean that like Croak counters Ashka. He doesn't, by the way, it's just an example. But actually, what I mean is there's a rock, paper, scissors game within each champion's kit. For example, Ashka's right click is countered by Bakko's shield. However, Ashka's Q ability, his volcano, goes through the shield because it's a ground AoE. Bakko's counter to the volcano is his space, which is something called an iframe or invincibility frame. And I'll come back to these things later. Long story short with champion selection, find something you like and just play it. You'll naturally gravitate towards champions that mesh with your playstyle, so just go with whatever your gut tells you. Moving on, let's take a look at gear. So straight off the bat, I think there are 3 items that are just not as valuable as the others. The riding saddle, keyring, and to a lesser extent the sheep medallion. The riding saddle might be useful for getting around and the keyring helps you loot faster early game, but eventually you're going to have to fight other players and neither of them are going to help you as much as other gear would. The sheep medallion is a little more useful. Personally, I would pick something else over this. Reason being, if you have more health, more damage, or more speed, you won't die in the first place. Keeping the sheep medallion is like presuming you're going to lose jewels. And the thing is, 9 times out of 10 when I kill someone with the sheep medallion, all they do is stall their death. They don't normally come back to life and kill me. It's not a bad piece of gear while you're learning the game, but I'd rather take items that make it less likely I'll die in the first place. Of course, early game, just take whatever you can get, but if you have the opportunity to drop your riding saddle for something better, personally, I would do it. Some of the more situational items include the Circlet of Resilience and the Amulet of Energy. It's usually better if you can avoid CC in the first place, but if you get CC'd a lot, then Resilience is good. The Energy Amulet is also situational. It's better for some champions than others. For example, Ashka's ultimate is really great, so I think the Amulet of Energy is pretty good for him. If your champion doesn't have such a great ultimate, then you might have better options. The Breastplate of Vitality gives you a hefty max HP boost, so that's solid for pretty much anyone. The Boots of Speed gives you a flat movement speed boost, which again can be useful for any champion. Then you have the Reaper's Edge and Ravager. Everyone loves more HP and more damage, so they're solid for any champion. Plus the Life Leech on Reaper's Edge is really nice when you have to trade damage. Finally, there's the Hunter's Quick Blade. This thing is insane for melee champions in particular. Getting a huge movement speed boost after your first hit is really good for chasing down those pesky ranged champions. Personally, I always take this as a melee champion. Even when it means dropping a high level piece of gear, it really is that good. I'm just gonna skim over consumables. They're all a lot of fun, so just use them however you like. But make sure you always have some health potions handy, and if you see a sentry turret, pick it up. If you can place one of those when the circle is small, you're gonna have a really good time. Moving on, let's take a look at some essential skills. Just like Battlerite Arena, the skill cap in Royale is pretty high. So it would be impossible to tell you everything in a small segment like this, but I'll give you some of the basics. First, know when to disengage. Chasing kills can waste a lot of time. Sometimes it's better to just let people go and carry on looting. I know it seems like a waste when someone is really low, but you actually might shoot yourself in the foot if you miss out on loot chasing one kill. Likewise, it's important to recognize when you can't win a fight. Never be ashamed to run away. Battlerite Royale isn't about honorable duels. It's about taking every little advantage you can find. You don't want a fair fight. So if a fight is risky or even unwinnable, run. Heal up, get some loot, or wait until you have an opportunity to catch them off guard. Secondly, it's important to know what an iframe is. I mentioned it earlier, but it's an ability that makes your champion invulnerable to damage during its animation. Some champions have more of these than others. Ashka, for example, has 3. His space, his E, and his ultimate. The way to spot an iframe is to look at your health bar when you use an ability. If the health bar disappears, you're invulnerable while the animation runs. A lot of mobility skills are iframes, and while it might be tempting to use those to chase opponents, sometimes that can get you killed. Ideally, you want to save those iframes to dodge high damage abilities like ultimates or snipes. Of course, sometimes it's okay to use them aggressively, just be mindful not to waste your iframes. And thirdly, know what your other defensives are. These are things like counters, shields, and stuff like that. This game isn't just about aim, it's about avoiding your enemy's high impact abilities using your defensives. For example, Blossom and Pestilus can block projectiles with their tree and queen respectively, and Alicia can block projectiles or push melee back with her ice crown. And if the enemy breaks it, it deals damage back to them. Other champions like Destiny and Shifu have counters. Again, these are best used to avoid the big hitters. Not only does it mitigate the damage, but each champion's counter has another benefit, like teleporting after the hit or pulling people towards them. And that brings me on to another piece of advice: cooldown usage. I've already talked a lot about this in regards to the arena, but it's worth reiterating. The best way to explain this to a beginner is for you to separate your skills into attacks and defensives. For Ashka, his attacks would be his left click, right click, and Q. His defensives are his space and E, both of which are iframes, and his R, which is a firewall that both blocks projectiles, and his left clicks that go through the wall heal him when he hits someone. His ultimate is actually kind of a hybrid. It's an iframe and it does some hefty damage in a stun. You can totally use it to finish someone off, but also don't be afraid to use it to stay alive or run away when things look grim. And you can apply this to any champion. Attacks are any abilities that serve no purpose other than to deal damage. Defensives are iframes and projectile blocks. Recognize which abilities are which and try to use them accordingly. So the way this plays into an actual duel is almost like a real-time game of chess. If your enemy uses some ground-targeted burst, use an iframe. If your opponent fires a high damage projectile at you, use a projectile block, an iframe, or a counter. Also, try not to waste these defensives on mouse 1 attacks. Try to save them for the big stuff. Finally, let's take a quick look at strategy. Okay, so the advice I'm going to give you here is for gaining rating. So let's quickly explain how rating works according to SLS. Each game you play, you get a score, which you'll see on the scoreboard at the end. This score is calculated by both your placement and your kills. So you'll get a higher score for winning with 6 kills than you will by winning with 3 kills. It seems like placement weighs in more heavily on your score, but kills are also important. So that score is then turned into a match rating and compared to your current hidden player rating. If your score for the match was higher than your player rating, you gain rank. If it was lower, you lose rank. So really, you want to survive and get kills if you want to climb. So with that in mind, here are a few strategies that I think work. Let's look at the early game first. Unless you're just doing it because you enjoy it, try to avoid landing near too many other players. Even if you're a good player, you can easily get killed in the crossfire between other people. Plus, you're competing with others for loot, and there's only a finite amount of loot that will spawn within a certain radius. So even if you do kill all 6 people who land near you, you're not going to get that much loot off them. And worst case scenario, you die early, either by getting unlucky or being outplayed, and you'll lose a lot of rating. Personally, I prefer to land a little further away from the flight path. If there are 1 or 2 others nearby, that can actually work in your favor. Just grab as much loot as you can early on while the other players are grabbing their loot, and now go hunt them down. Because you're in a more remote location, both of you will have picked up a lot of loot. Now, use all those skills I just taught you and kill them. Take all their loot, and honestly, if both of you have just looted a reasonable area, you'll have a ton of gear. As I said, you're rewarded for getting more kills, and you want to take any advantage you can get. If you manage to get to item level 25 or more within the first minute or so, which is totally doable if you do what I just described, it's time to go hunting. That's one of the advantages of starting somewhere remote. There will likely be other people who also manage to loot a lot of stuff, and that means they'll have a decent amount of loot to steal, and they're probably alone. So that's one strategy, and it's my personal favorite. You're basically trying to get some early momentum in gear, and then using your superior gear to farm other players. This strat is almost like playing Agario, if anyone remembers that game, except in Battlerite Royale, you don't get slower as you become more powerful, you turn into a freaking bull shark. The other strategy is to play like a survivalist. Croak and Xander are really good at this because they can just run away if a fight looks too dangerous. Just like the other strat, you want to start far away from the flight path, but instead of looking for early kills, you want to just keep looting. If you can get a kill, go for it, but if a fight looks too hard, just keep moving, keep looting. One issue you might have with this strat is having less gear in the late game. When that circle is tiny and there are only 5 people left, chances are you'll be around item level 35, while some bull shark who's been bullying people all game might have all legendary items. The thing is though, you can kind of vulture off other people's kills at the end. That guy with level 45 gear doesn't need anything else. So if he kills someone, there will probably be legendary items just there for the taking. So go grab it, you sneaky frog. One issue with this strat is that you'll probably get less kills. Honestly, your placement is more important until you get to a higher rating, so it's a reasonable strat unless you're aiming for Grand Champion. Like I said, I'm gonna come back to all of these topics in more detail at a later date. I just wanted to put all this together as kind of a quick start guide for new players. So if you're a new player, I hope this helps you get into the game a little faster. And if you're a veteran, maybe you learned a thing or two, or maybe you can leave a comment down below with some additional advice for new players. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please feel free to subscribe for more gaming guides, news, and discussion. And don't forget to check out the links below to Patreon, Discord, and Twitch. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.